Of the media, thank you for attending this press conference called by the Alliance for Change. Today it's a very important press conference. We have with us today the leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes, Ms. Laura George, our advisor on Indigenous Affairs, former leader of the party, and co-founder Kemraj Ramjatan. We will be joined shortly by chairman of the party, David Patterson. And online, we have our advisor on oil and gas, Dr. Vincent Adams, and advisor on diaspora affairs, Dr. Shamir Ali. We will start with a statement by our leader, Mr. Nigel Hughes. Nigel.
Good afternoon, members of the press. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday afternoon. As you know, the president at a political rally early in the week announced that September 1st will be the date for the national and regional elections. We are assuming that the constitutional and statutory requirements will be complied with later today, or certainly by the end of the weekend, when that announcement will become formally made. I'm very happy and privileged as the leader of the Alliance for Change to announce that the Alliance for Change will be contesting the 2025 national and regional elections. We have put together an extremely strong team with many surprises. We will be focusing on several things, and this is not necessarily the order of priority. Cost of living, governance, indigenous development and indigenous land rights, education, complete health reform, adjustment in the taxation, governance, and of course we will be also addressing the issue of infrastructure development. We have a lot of new, modern, innovative ideas which we will be disclosing over the course of the next 4 to 5 days. And the Alliance for Change looks forward and is confident in its participation in the election. I'm happy to have with us at the head table, and you've already been introduced to those persons. Unfortunately, we have heard from Atlanta about what has happened in relation to the second post-mortem of Adriana Young. What it does confirm, and this is coming from the coroner who has no personal interest in the matter, that there is clearly a need for a full and frank investigation into the death of Adriana. We had said at the start of this tragedy, on the day that her body was discovered, that we believed that the Ghana police force was incapable of conducting an independent investigation, particularly where one of their senior police officers was actually actively involved in publicizing what we consider diversionary tactics. We are firmly of the view that there has been no proper investigation into her death, and now with the recent disclosures from the coroner in Atlanta, it is clear that we need an independent investigation. You will recall that the ambassador from the United States of America said that the American government was willing to assist in this process, and several opposition parties, including ourselves, called, and we repeat the call, for the president to invite. All he has to do is ask the government of the United States to make available the superior investigative skills of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and we think that that is needed now more than ever, particularly given the passage of time between the date of the event and where we are today. You will recall that this government and its ministers of education have repeatedly disclosed a rejection of any form of professional, independent, international investigation, starting with the Henry Boys, or I shouldn't say starting, the Henry Boys being one of them, and up to now, that murder, along with Harish Singh, remains unsolved. You will recall in the Henry Boys there was an offer for international forensic assistance which was rejected by the government, and it's the same government today that is failing to call, and by that failure is rejecting calls across the society for an independent investigation. Guyana will be unable to move past Adriana Young in the absence of an independent investigation. I think several people, including people who are very sympathetic to the government, consider that this was a bridge too far and a line crossed. And we just wish to repeat our invitation to the President to invite competent international forensic experts like the Federal Bureau of Investigation to conduct a full inquiry into the death of Adriana Young. We do not accept the statements made by the Commissioner of Police, particularly where they had an interest to serve. With that, I thank you for this afternoon, and I will pass over to Ms. Laura George, who we're very happy to have as part of our team in the elections.
So I'll speak in my language.
But then who's going to translate?
Good afternoon, members of the media. I will largely speak to or repeat what the leader of the AFC announced in terms of running or contesting the 2025 general and regional elections. But what I'm going to do this afternoon is probably what I haven't done here at all, which is to speak in my language, which is the Kapong language. So while many of you will not understand what I mean, what I'm speaking to, but it will be largely saying what Mr. Hughes has just announced. And I'm largely doing this for the purpose of the Akawayo people, the Arikuna, the Patamuna, and the Makushi, who to some extent will also understand what I'm saying. Dombarong, it's my people. The Alliance for Change, AFC leader, Mr. Nigel Hughes, negamaba ang selebekulu President ya egamapu itua nagong election iji 1st of September atay seliyerio. Merabambak, the Alliance for Change, AFC, eto orang mang contest mambatia, nyaji mera President pe merebra kobunabe teto komber goi contest mabak nyamang selebetia. Olaganan nagay. Nya ito orang segaza kupara ongone ka nyamang gaya na ongone ka nyamang segaza tuwai nya zenmingaria. Ole yaura. Para pe koza ne bulok nogong gokmandok ezelu kone ka nyaji wagi wabe. Ene pe namang tuke. Kapong amako ne razak enno wiche to eji sarang winagay mang egorak mambak. Merebra tibara sa kanya ule ne pe kapong amok mang Maraga sa korak mate korak may lagu mano epay bramang tuwe ko diesel ko ne kanyaya. Branch ka mungo gong enu barige. Mare education dananik. Mungo gong zenu basa ito eji. Mara kamo ay gorong yabay egerong bukabona. Abune bra egebe para egone garane. Mungo gong mang abunele para mare yata egone gabugembra. Mare bechige to nansak Asian amike. To ezelu kugone gabay na baji wagi wabe to esa etope sele bara sa konyaw tawong tuwat nya zermingazak tezelu gong kone gasan nyayamang mora bona mora ben bak mugabak social services tananik arabak ngula no gong goji pugong kwa no samchibe kuyana sa kong egora mambo mang biambe ene pero enazak morbe brato mungam praji to pigatoni nambraji Branch ka kiali be pra ay gobelo to pra yejige moragasa koi amako no samchamak ulo rogom barasek sale gayana kone gachi yesa kong egora manamai sale yenda ege be pra seborane damogoli gong nokong amako negora mayang dombarong morebak morendak ichebra namang moragasa timainam basambere tope branch ka tibigata zambere tope to ezel ku kone gazele tuwe ko na zerminga zamang. Morabona? Kaponga moji. Gaya ni speles tambole na gora tau. Nai gaza kulu yezelu gongone gabay nai. Te gora may lema no namik. tidak kual le yuam bele mungo kong de tema butek to Asian Mike segaza ke paimang segaza ku prarai borok wina zelu kone ga jimura ko bane nu bagal le teste yesh e nana Mike sane etane wagbe biara se kone ga se etope te trawas mambe sambe na ko tau blare gon ko eni nambe e na rope dezelu kone ga ro e paimang ta sa nyaya mang mara bu kubona le ga sa ko gen yet menu ga sa etope esugen sa yeshi etop praja bune bra Panape mai mugong achirok ezeluation mara lawyer tani papango. Marabak letet zenji mazing eto peji labe Amerindian Act luba amat luba le ego negaro pera wana neji mara. Tambolo ninjira mara ninji achizele land rights nagainek indigenous people's rights. Olegasa kaponga mo gokmandok nongbo timanyal gombarasek on the mambe to dogom barasek, konipak to dogom barasek, agamana to dogom barasek, Moralubarombak tamboro, kapong dunese, Zaurot Norope, what Dezelugona Chinya, Gomamazela Dombarong, Abunebra, took Quango Nation murder, Nono Seculu Dabak, Mutani Moragazak, Kaponga Matere Prali, Koneburige, Dambogomange, Yeshiba Gyonaga eight nor orong, to what Dezelugonagas at Nyayamang, Erlegaza, Jebuluron Kuluterek. Kaponga mak leaders tamal to show samak mraka turongong debulu rombogombe wagbe to zerek sele tambori bak gaini zampe yezel gongone garope to go excel alliance for change mang moragaza tigale de gongone gas nyaya morabantane sele nyaya lega mamul on ankugen jeji tamboro nyabogombe to go donor kome tamboro amra no gongbak ega maya dombarong morabang ega magas nyaya sele selebe morenegena.
After Dr. Adams, we will ask Professor Shamirali to make his statement and then come to Mr. Kevraj Ramjitan. Dr. Adams, are you ready?
Bev, we're not hearing you, Bev. Hello? You hear me? No song, Bev. Hello? You hear me, Bev?
No sound, headquarters, no sound. HQ, no sound. CFC, no sound.
Go ahead.
You're not hearing.
No, we're not hearing. He's not hearing us. Dr. Adams?
Yeah, I barely hear you, Nigel.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
All right. Okay, good. Good afternoon, members of the media and to our listeners. As the press may recall, last week, we challenged the Vice President, Garrido-Lowe, to reveal the oil depletion policy that he's been talking about. And yesterday's press conference, the media asked him about his policy and asked him if he can release his policy. And after beating around the bush and going around and around, he said, well, he could put it on his website. He could. He didn't say that he would or shall. He said he would put it on the website, indicating, well, he did two things there. As in his slippery self, he did two things. He kind of indicated that there is such a policy, and that he may, what is just as if he said may, he may put it on the website. Well, we're challenging him again to put it on his website. Now, this is the same man who just a few press conferences ago said that he also had all of the field development plan on the website. So you cannot believe him. This is not a leader or a government that you can believe and be trusted. And they were put there for the people to trust them. So we're calling again for him to release that policy that he claims. Now, the second thing that he mentioned yesterday, which was kind of which which did not go unnoticed, was the Bellevue project. A question was asked about the Bellevue project and the progress. And I could not believe this project, which is supposed to be close to $1 billion, this man sat there and laughed it away. He literally laughed it away and said, he turned to the reporter and told the reporter, oh, just ask Critic, who I guess is the contractor, turn around and tell him to ask Critic. Well, the taxpayers did not give Critic the money. The taxpayers put it in his hands or his government hands to spend it wisely in the interest of the people of Guyana. He handed over to this contractor who was, we all know by now, that was not even qualified. But he handed over this contractor. This contractor, the work is stalled, the money is being wasted, and when he's asked for it, he's turning it over. Well, the press should ask the contractor. He's not holding himself accountable. And it seems as if that's the way that they're operating. They don't care where the money goes. They're wasting it. We're seeing what they're doing with roads and all of the other projects. We're seeing what is happening with the gas to energy project, which has now tripled in cost. But it doesn't matter to them. It's not their money. It's the people's money that they're wasting. This is not the government that we want in office. And, even going back to the depletion policy, they're even lawlessly putting this nation at risk to have an oil spill without any protection for it on the backside, any liability to cover it. They are allowing the operators to pump oil way above its limit. As a matter of fact, he talks about pumping. His policy is to pump at the maximum extent. It is not to pump at the maximum. It is to pump way beyond the maximum that is allowed by engineering and science, even if it means putting this nature and the Caribbean at risk of having an oil spill. So this is not the government that we should trust to look after our best interests. And they need to be changed. And I'm sure that the people are going to take heed of their untrustworthiness, and they're acting not in the best interest of the nation. Matter of fact, they even go against the people when they sided with Exxon against the unlimited liability coverage, and then they come up with this scam of a bill to let it appear as if there will be unlimited liability coverage, and it's nowhere in there. So thanks, Bev.
Thank you.
No sound. Is it my turn? My
Go
turn?
ahead, Dr. Ali.
Hello, namaste, salams to the media.
Yes,
and
please
all
go ahead.
listeners. Yes. The private statement today is on the Private Sector Commission, PSC of Guyana, collecting approximately $30 million in donations for the Madia Secondary School dormitory fire relief efforts, which claimed tragically 20 lives. However, despite accumulating $29,941,375 under the designation Contributions for Madhya Fire Relief during the chairmanship of Komal Singh, on May 25th, it was reported in the media very widely that none of these funds have been distributed to the victims or utilized for relief efforts. This has sparked significant criticism from the Alliance for Change party, expressing total disappointment in the PSC's leadership and shame towards the Guyana Police Force for their inaction. The Alliance for Change party's statement highlights the urgent need for transparency, openness, and accountability in handling donations meant for those affected by the disaster. Key concerns surrounding this issue include lack of transparency in the decision-making process regarding the allocation of funds, failure of the PSC to distribute funds to victims' families or apply them to relief efforts, and accountability on the questions about the PSC leadership's responsibility in managing donations. The PPPC one-seat majority response to this situation remains unclear, but a commission of inquiry was established to investigate the fire incident. The report from this commission is crucial in understanding the circumstances surrounding the tragedy and potentially addressing the concerns related to the PSC's handling of donations. The PPP government appears to be in lockstep with the PSC, while the PSC's affluent leadership is withholding funds from impoverished Amerindian families, denying them the support they desperately need. End. Ladies and gentlemen, the AFC is about problems to solutions. We want the government to succeed. Election is lost and the government is there. So based on that principle and Shamir's personal principle, I reached out to the Public Service Commission, to a top executive, and I will read his exact words. These monies were donated by the PSC members and not the public. As such, the PSC members is deciding what they will do with this money. This is active conversation at the PSC, and it will soon be decided on the best way to utilize that funds for the affected communities. I thank that officer for the explanation and expressing my hope that the PSC public announcement will soon follow. Thank you.
Just wanted to add a little in relation to that PSC catastrophe. And it is that the membership and the body itself has turned into what the country has now regarded as a dysfunctional entity. And by their action, they have made it appear, or pretty obvious, quite frankly, as if it's a department or extension of the government. And in view of the fact that the government has seen it fit now for them to be an elections monitor entity, the Alliance for Change would want to question whether they are fit and proper for such an activity. In relation to the other matter that I would wish to make some remarks, it has to do with the sad development of our staunch member, veteran and stalwart, who died recently. As you know, Valerie Garrido-Lowe joined and strengthened this political movement sometime in 2011 when she became a parliamentarian of the same year. She was an extremely articulate person, and articulate on the issues of hinterland affairs and Amerindian affairs. She was a party activist of the highest order and an agitator for the right things for her constituents. Of course, she straddled, like I did, the political landscape. Her story was one of political involvement from a very young age. I think she became a YSM member about way into the 80s, then almost 15 years as a UF member. Then she became an AFC member, and then, of course, an APNU AFC minister in the APNU AFC 2015-2020 government. We are going to miss her very dearly because of the activist work she did all across the land. And of course, we had really wanted her services for the upcoming elections of 1st September. But to her family, her friends, our heartfelt condolences from the AFC. We are going to have a tribute to her at 5 this afternoon at our CFC, and we are asking members of the public if they could also come. Please do come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramjitan.
I gave one already.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we will now entertain your questions. You know the usual protocol of raising your hand if you are online, the raise hand feature, and identify yourself and the agency you represent. I'm faintly hearing someone, but I'm not seeing a raise hand feature, so. Okay, so I see a number of hands up. Who is? Okay. Okay, I will take in the order of Davina, Anassa Williams, Mr. Adam Harris, and Shamar Musa. So the order is Davina, Anassa, Adam, Shamar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Davina Bagat.
If you have a follow-up, and then we move on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. This is Davina Bagat with Culture News.
Go ahead, Davina.
My first question is for Mr. Hughes. In announcing the AFC's plans to contest the elections, you briefly noted some areas of focus. But, sir, there was no mention of plans for the oil and gas sector, which we know is the main driver of the country's economy. Could you address some of the AFC's plans in that regard and specifically say whether there will be a renegotiation of the Exxon deal by a government headed by yourself?
Good afternoon, Davina. I'm very tempted to say to you, nice try. As you know, I don't comment on oil and gas, and fortunately today we have both of our main spokespersons as spokesmen on oil and gas, both Dr. Vince and David Patterson here, and so I will invite them to take that question.
Hi, good afternoon, Davina. How are you? Hope all is well. Davina, I think the AFC in particular, and I think the opposition as a whole, but AFC has been unequivocal that for management of the oil and gas sector, we are in support of any action that will bring better benefits to the Guyana people. If that means speaking and readjusting the contract and safeguarding the people, that's speaking on insurance, depletion policies, as well as the decommissioning, insurance. We have called for, and I personally have moved motions, and it is in our action plan, for us to do baseline surveys, something which the government has promised and never done. We have been advocates for a petroleum commission to bring some technical expertise into it, rather than one man getting up on a Thursday afternoon and dictating how the oil revenues should be spent and our interaction with persons. We have advocated, and we will continue to advocate for the training of persons in the oil and gas sector, enhanced. I mean, we've advocated for a revision of the EPA Act. We will be these are all things that we will be calling for, and we will look again at the recently passed Petroleum Activities Act, as well as the oil spill and the sovereign guarantee, what is the Natural Resources Fund. Obviously, as you know, that there are comments on it. We don't feel that there's enough money sequestered away for future generations. You know what I mean? There is enough money, and we think that there's more transparency in it. I mean, I know that Dr. Campbell has a matter in court on how it should be administered, and all of those issues we've been saying consistently, and all of them will be part of our push and our manifesto. Thank you.
Let me add briefly to what David said here, and I think the bottom line is, Davina, this year will be amongst our very highest of priorities to deal with as soon as we get into office. And one of the things that I know that David didn't mention with the list that we intend to act upon is, of course, ring fencing. So yes, everything that David said, that's where we're heading. As soon as we get into office this year, will be our highest priority to address every single issue that have been raised about this oil contract and its deficiencies. So our intent is to make it better in the best interest of the Guyanese people, while at the same time making sure that, like in every contract, making sure that the contractor is also gets a fair share.
Okay, I don't have a follow-up, but I have another question.
Before,
can I go ahead with my second question, or
Davina, before you,
wait until you come around?
Davina, before you do it, just let me put on the record our 18 points that we are will be done. Governance and transparency in the conduct of business. These are a policy decision. We will be addressing reintroduction and prohibition of dumping produced waters into the ocean, reinjection of during the production of gas flaring, rigorous monitoring. These are our policy broad framework. Rigorous monitoring, including real-time onboard and remote monitoring and contractors reporting. Solid waste management. There is an issue, obviously, of the waste management for produced items. I mean, I know Dr. Adams, at a future time, he can probably elaborate about the dumping of toxic waste or semi-toxic waste at our landfills. Capacity review and restructuring of the oversight and regulatory framework. Capacity building and staff retention at the oversight bodies such as EPA, GRA, and the CDC. Baseline studies and monitoring requirements by the environment, by the oil and gas sector. The Natural Resource Fund. Full library coverage and payer and company guarantees. Strict compliance with EIAs and all regulations, including consequences for non-compliance. Capping stack logistics, location and deployment time. Feasibility studies for certain type of projects defined by set criteria. National oil company. Contract negotiating, including changing contract type. Cradle to grave management of all waste produced onshore and offshore for oil operation, including waste treatment and disposal facilities. Ring fencing and decommissioning. I mean, obviously, and that's the full list of 18 policies, areas in which we will be addressing. Thank you for the opportunity, Davina.
Thank you, Davina. Davina, we're going to come back to you for your second question. I will entertain Anasa at this point.
Good morning, everyone. My question is for Dr. Adams. Dr. Adams, there's been for a long time, the ongoing debate with the depletion policy. And what we've been trying to find out is there a physical policy, a written policy that can be released to the media? But my question to you is it possible for the government to create a depletion policy without parliamentary input?
I would have to, I would suspect, but I'm going to let the folks in Parliament talk about the second part of the question in terms of whether they can go ahead with the depletion policy without parliamentary input. I don't, me sitting from the outside, I would say no, but I'll let the MPs handle that. But in terms of a depletion policy, I guess the question was whether we had a depletion policy. Was that it?
The Vice President would have said last week that the policy we currently have. So that is an indication that we have policy in place. But we asked him yesterday if the policy is going to be made available to the media, and his response was, "We will release it when in some time, at some point in time." But what the Guyanese people want to know is, do we actually have a physical policy, a written policy, or is this just something in the VP's head?
No, it is something in his head. I don't think he said would, and I could go ahead and check. I thought he said we could put it on our website. I think that he used the word could, not would. But I'll be willing to bet you anything that there is no such policy that they have written. And like I said, the depletion policy is not just talking off the top of your head. It takes a lot of data and analyzing that data, and it comes down to, you remember I always refer to the field development plans, which is the key to making decisions. And what that field development plan has is the production profile of every single one of those projects. And you can see when it peaks, every one of those will start declining very rapidly. Let's say within the next couple of years, when we peak at, 1.3 billion, it wouldn't stay there. It would start declining. So what you do, you first develop your strategic plan for the nation, 10, 20 years strategic plan. Of course, it changes with circumstances. You look at what those needs are. Based upon what you're planning there, you decide how much you want from out of the oil sector. And then you take that back to that production profile to see how you can cut back or even increase the production. Well, it's not increased because now they're operating even way above the maximum level of those production profile. And that's the thing that the media ought to call them out on. The engineering and science, which is what goes into that FDP and those profiles, is based upon engineering and science, and they're exceeding those limits that's prescribed in the environmental impact assessment and in their FDPs. So they're exceeding it to put this country and the rest of the Caribbean in grave danger of something happening. But going back to your question again, the policy, I'd be willing to bet you that there's no policy. He shoots from off of his head, the top of his head, but that's not the way you develop policies. It's the same thing like the gas energy project. The only thing you hear from him, there's no need for a feasibility study. It's a no-brainer. And that's exactly what we're getting from this government. And it's reckless and it's irresponsible.
Will respond on the legislative side of the question.
The question of policy does not need to go to Parliament, Anissa. What's needed in Parliament is if you when you move that policy from the study and you want to enshrine it in laws, that's when you need to go to Parliament. But like Dr. Vince, I can guarantee you that there's no such policy. I want to just remind everybody, this whole country, that the Vice President and the Minister of natural resources, and the president in 2020, early 2020, early 2021, promised that there will be several studies to do the gas ashore. They promised that they produced a gas monetization document, which was like it was written by ChatGPT, which they paid almost $20,000 to someone. A kindergarten person could have written that, and when it was laughed at, they withdrew it and said that was just a draft. They have not replaced it. They promised to do the Petroleum Commission. They never did it. They have done no such policy documents. They simply are winging it every day. You know what I mean? Almost at the back of an envelope sort of operation. You mean? And if Barra Jagdeo and the PPP had the policy, the type of government they would have been having a big launch, plenty PR and those things like that. So he's only pulling the wool over the country's eye by saying that they have any documentation whatsoever. They don't.
Thank you, Mr. David.
Let me add quickly.
We will now take the question from Mr. Adam Harris. Adam?
Yes, sorry, I was barely hearing. Good afternoon, all. My question is to Mr. Hughes. The AFC is going it alone. However, there is a widely held view that a combined opposition could defeat the PPP. Obviously, the AFC doesn't believe in a combined opposition. Was the decision to go it alone taken lightly? Sorry, I can't hear you. Pull the mic closer, I can't hear you.
I think quite the contrary. The Alliance for Change has gone above and beyond to try and find a resolution that would result in a combined opposition. So I don't accept your premise that the Alliance for Change does not believe in a combined opposition. However, we are at the stage where we have decided that we are going to compete in the elections. And that's where we are. What was the second part of your question?
I said that obviously you didn't arrive at the decision lightly. But from what you just said, it's not a foregone conclusion that you're abandoning a combined opposition. Did I hear you correctly, sir?
Well, what I will say, it is we are always committed to whatever is in the best interest of Ghana. That is always our first and foremost position. And I can say without any hesitation or any pangs of conscience that we have done our utmost best up to the very last moment to attempt to arrive at a position in which we can offer to Guyana the optimal choice. And we are convinced and confident in our position at the moment. And that is where we are, I'm afraid.
Any follow-up, Mr. Harris? Adam, any follow-up?
No, not at this point. Not at this point. He was quite lucid.
We will now take Shamar and then we'll go back to Davina. Shamar?
Yes. Mr. Hughes, I have it's kind of a two-part question. Given your response just now, APNU and the WPA have announced a coalition. Does this mean that the AFC has been completely excluded from this partnership? And do you believe that the party would be able to successfully contest these elections alone? That's the first part. And the second part is the party considering the possibility of partnerships with other parties or individuals?
Sure. Insofar as exclusion is concerned, I think that question should be directed to the APNU and the WPA because they would be the people to exclude. What I can say is that I am very, very happy with the endeavors of our negotiators at several stages, and I certainly at a personal level, after that did not bear fruit, endeavored to try and reach a position in which we thought that we can offer to the country a combined opposition. In relation to your second question, I am confident in the fortunes of the Alliance for Change. I am confident in the fortunes of the Alliance for Change. I will not tempt the gods by suggesting what the outcome will be, but I am particularly, I am happy with our fortunes.
And in just
and the other part,
just for your final questions, let me deal with that. I think I'm Nigel, and of course we are the name of our party since our establishment is Alliance, and we will be having an alliances with persons, like-minded persons, to contest the 2025 elections.
Thank you for that addition, Mr. Patterson. Shamar, you had a follow-up?
no, I just wanted, I thought Mr. Hughes was going to answer the other part of the question, but Mr. Patterson just did. Thank you.
Thank
Most
you.
welcome.
Davina, you ready with your next question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to know the possibility of the AFC re-engaging the PNC APNU ahead of the elections. And Mr. Hughes, could you say who will be your running mate, as in your prime ministerial candidate, should you head to the polls as an individual party? And finally, I think you hinted at this earlier, but are you concerned about your party's prospects with the specific announcement by Mr. Azruddin Mohammed that he'll be joining the race?
All right, let me just take the first part about look. Technically, there is until nomination day. That is when technically all possibilities are closed. So anything. So if you say it, that bear in mind that, and then there's also other possibilities of a joiner list and those other things 10 days before elections. If you're asking for a technical answer, or but so that's the position. But as the leader explained, how the party will be contesting is as is. I think he spoke already about our options, and our outcomes. But you can.
I think you specifically asked about Mr. Azruddin Mohammed. I welcome Mr. Mohammed into this election cycle. It gives Guyanese a wider range of choices, and anything that offers the electorate a wider range of choices is good. I think for a long time we have had limited choices. Excuse me, up to 2006, and Mr. Mohammed clearly has had an impact on the electorate, and we welcome him. We hope that this election we will bring out the best of Guyanese so that we won't descend into language and actions that lower the standard of discourse during the course of the election. I can certainly say on behalf of the Alliance for Change, we are committed to the highest standards of discourse, the highest standards of conduct, and we know that that may be difficult for some people, but we would like to encourage all participants. Let us pay tribute to the Guyanese electorate who deserve it by maintaining the highest standards of engagement, and let us debate about policy and performance and not get distracted by other events that perhaps will not put us in as favorable a light as the country ought to be, particularly given our current circumstances. On the running mate, on the running mate, that's going to be announced pretty soon. The highest level of the party has to endorse that choice, and I wouldn't want to do that until they have had an opportunity to deliberate upon it.
Thank you. Tammy, we recognize you. Tammy, do you have
I
a
had a
question?
follow-up question.
Oh,
I
sorry,
had a
just
follow-up
hold a
briefly.
minute, Tammy. Go ahead with your follow-up, Davina.
Thank you. I just wanted to know from Mr. Hughes whether he believes Azruddin Mohammed can actually dampen your support at the elections.
Let me say this again. Let me repeat. I welcome Mr. Mohammed, which means I welcome the competition, and I welcome it for many reasons, but particularly because it gives other persons a choice, and it forces us to improve our game. I don't think it's ever over until that proverbial fat lady sings, and during the next 3 months, we are going to see who has the best policies, who are the persons that treat and engage with the public, the electorate, particularly on the future of this country. So at this point, I really do welcome his participation. And I look forward, if we have a national debate of the candidates, we look forward to that.
Thank you. Tammy, your question, please, Tammy. Tammy, can you unmute and ask your question?
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry about that. I was having some trouble with my phone. I want to ask a follow-up about Mr. Mohammed. I know Mr. Hughes said that he supports the competition. Can the party say if you guys have had any discussions at all with Mr. Mohammed about possibly coalescing for the upcoming elections, or if you may talk about meeting? My other question is, we've seen recently that a number of previously opposition-aligned persons have come forth supporting the PPC and Mr. Ali. We saw Daniel Seram, Van West Charles, and others. Does the party have any concerns about persons jumping across to the PPC?
Okay, so let me start off by saying everybody has a choice, particularly to make a political choice. People who have dedicated their time and service to political parties for years have the right and freedom to go wherever they want to go. And so we have nothing against that. The persons who have been in the press recently have not been members of our party. Whether they go to the People's Progressive Party or any other party, that's their choice. What I will say is that you will hear some very exciting announcements from the Alliance for Change over the next 3 months about people who have come to us. And I look forward to being able to do that. But I think it's all in the best interest of the country that people are public with where they stand.
Thank you, Nigel Hughes, leader of the Alliance for Change.
And on the question of Mr. Mohammed and possible coalition,
Sorry, yes.
any discussions
Forgive me, yeah,
happening
sure,
or
certainly.
possibly happening?
Okay, well, let me say that nothing has happened since we last spoke publicly on that initial meeting when Mr. Mohammed consulted with me in my professional capacity. I have said subsequently in terms of whether I was available or capable of acting for him, and I did indicate what the positions were. The Alliance for Change and Mr. Mohammed's party have not been involved in any discussions. We have 3 months ahead of us. I can't predict the future. And at the end of the day, as I've said, whatever is in the best interest of Ghana, we will endeavor to support and participate in.
Thank you, Mr. Nigel Hughes, leader of the Alliance for Change. I don't at this point see any other hand raised. Any other questions? I see Davina's hand is still up. Is there another question, Davina?
Yes, if I may, I just wanted to ask Mr. Hughes about the oil spill bill that was recently passed in the National Assembly, and perhaps Mr. Ramjatan as well, if he has any specific concerns. We see the Commonwealth Lawyers Association and others are calling on the president to withhold assent. I wanted to know if he has any specific concerns with regard to the proposed legislation. Thanks.
Davina, I know that you're accustomed to political parties having one speaker who speaks on absolutely everything. This is one of the areas in which the AFC defines and distinguishes itself. We have several high-level, competent people to speak on different topics, and that's the way in which a Hughes administration will operate. We don't have a God. We have several competent people, and we will be setting up the institutions that will be analyzing data, which we will share with the people. We will have freedom of information. And as I've said before, we have both David Patterson and Dr. Vince Adams to speak. And certainly in parliamentary affairs, the leader in parliament is Kemraj Ramjatan. So this is not a party that has one single leader. We have several persons of equal competence, and I'm just happened to be first amongst equals. So I'll ask Mr. Ramjatan to respond to this, and I'm very happy as the previous prime ministerial candidate that he's here with us this afternoon.
Davina, Davina, you would have heard the articulation given by David Patterson in Parliament, literally opposing and exposing the deficits in that act. And I supported them fully. You have also seen the articles by Vince Adams, the other expert that really knows a thing or two, and being very trying to lessen the impact of his knowledge in the area. But you know what we are getting from Vince. That bill, now an act, I don't know if it has been assented to yet, but whatever it is wholly defective in so many areas. And of course, only recently, there was a challenge by the Attorney General, Anil Nandalal, to debate Vince Adams on the bill. Let the debate go on. Let us hear from the two of them, because it would appear that Anil Nandalal is not only a lawyer now, he's an oil expert.
Thank you. I just wanted to say very briefly that I was hoping to get a legal perspective. I understand.
Davina, Mr. Patterson will add.
Good afternoon, Tammy. We've raised several issues. Not only the party, I think the general public has raised several issues. We've raised the underlying intent, the concern on the underlying intent of the bill. I've said it publicly. I said it in Parliament that the government has very little faith in the Attorney General's ability to be successful in the higher courts and the appeal courts. Just as it is similar with the Land Acquisition Act, whereby once and in this case, the Justice Kissoon has already ruled against them. In the Land Acquisition Act, several of the judges has asked for additional information, which they could not provide, and they obviously used their one-seat majority to change it. The Act, everyone has said it out at this stage, is not progressive. And if the Act is not progressive, we do, and it does not augur well for the country going forward. It is a piecemeal stopgap piece of legislation. And Vince is saying we will be into the millions of barrels per oil per day. Why is it this government is rushing and not putting the country's citizens and the environment, in particular the indigenous peoples? Do you know there was zero consultation with the indigenous communities, those in Region 1, Three Rivers, Marawan, and those things like that? Those are the areas where they will be the first impacted. Shell Beach, the first impacted by oil spill. Imagine you bringing out a bill that you haven't even consulted the persons who have been looking after our environment for hundreds of years. Then, of course, I made a question. I mean, they had about 21 persons who will make up this committee. All but two of them are from independent sources. The National Two Shows Council, who obviously represents a large and important segment of our community, they were not even included in given the opportunity to be membership of the oil spill board. So it's not progressive, and as I said before, this is something we will address. And addressing oil spill is not anti-developmental. The vice president and the president and everyone else keeps insisting anything that you do to protect our citizens is anti-developmental, as though our country is sort of a pimper's paradise, and if we don't put in laws and regulations, people won't want to come here anymore. Absolute hogwash. In any other country, particularly United States and Europe, there are rules and laws, and everyone coexists, and everyone makes money. So we will address that very urgently once the new government is in place.
Thank you, Mr.
Let me add quickly, Beverly, if you don't mind. I think a lot of us are missing the exact motive behind this government, and it was expressed explicitly by Mr. Nandalal in all of his narrative. Let me tell you what Mr. Nandalal says, which affirms that his only intent was to overturn Judge Kissoon's ruling. Listen to what he says. He has said in the debate. He said, Unlimited, now he's talking about the judge. Unlimited guarantee is not an animal known to the legal world. Secondly, he said, listen to this, he said, must we allow a decision to remain on the record that doesn't make sense in law? He's talking about Judge Kissoon's ruling. He went on, must we be allowed to remain frustrated by an ill-informed decision by the court? He went on, he said, it would be highly irresponsible to leave that decision on public record. Then he goes on, it is a misnomer, and that is the problem with that ruling. And then here's what he said also. He said, it is, he said, the decision distorts the law of the country, and no other investor will come to the sector. Those were the justification for this bill, according to Mr. Nandalal, and it points directly to his motive as to why he wanted this bill, which is to overrule Judge Kissoon's ruling.
Vince, thank you for reminding me of an important breach of the separation of powers. It is most unfortunate that the Attorney General will choose the language he chose to attack the decision of a sitting judge. That is precisely why the legal system has a hierarchy. It has an appellate court, and we have the Caribbean Court of Justice, in which Mr. Nandalal reposes a lot of confidence. So one would have expected that if he felt so confident about the prospects of success at the higher level, that we would have had the benefit of the mature deliberations of the judges of appeal, both at the Court of Appeal level and at the CCJ. The Alliance for Change, without reservation, condemns that unfortunate, vulgar language used to attack a judge personally in relation to the discharge of his judicial functions and arriving at a finding. Justice Kissoon gave a very long, very reasoned decision. And if Mr. Nandalal was motivated as he was, then he should have sought the benefit of the Court of Appeal and the CCJ. Using the legislation to blunt the effect, or I should say nullify the effect of a judgment which clearly defines the position in law, is not only executive overreach, it is a breach of the separation of powers. And to use a single one-seat majority to negative and nullify the decision of a sitting judge rather than await the appellate process is executive lawlessness. And this is one of the reasons why one of our key planks for campaigning is constitutional reform. We cannot repose 100% of the power in somebody that barely squares 50% of the vote, because you end up in the position in which we are, in which half the population is intentionally excluded. And somehow as a palliative you say there's development. There's no development if half the country cannot participate in the decision-making processes. And I hope that the press would call out Mr. Nandalal for his commentary and most unfortunate language used to attack a sitting judge.
Thank you, Mr. Nigel Hughes, for that addition. Adam, you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Two, as a matter of fact.
Go ahead, Mr. Adam Harris.
Yeah, Mr. Hughes could perhaps answer this, and the other one would be for Ms. Laura George. Sir, I have always learned that laws cannot be enacted retroactively. But I'm hearing talk about this decision overturning Justice Kissoon's decision. How could that be in a court of law?
There's no decision, Adam. What is they pass laws. They pass a law that they're seeking to nullify the impact of the decision. They haven't specifically said that the law will have retroactive effect, but what that law does is it nullifies the effect of Justice Kissoon's decision. It's prospective. It's from the day of the decision going forward.
From the day of its assent.
Yeah, the day of the assent by the president to the legislation. Yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner, and perhaps the rest of the panel. Now, the vote coming out of the hinterland community, particularly by our indigenous brothers and sisters, have always been impactful on previous elections. There has been talk that a lot of Warao Venezuelans from across the border came and they have been registered. Whether the registration process was legal or not, I'm in no position to say. Now, are you in a position to say what has been the impact of registering those Venezuelans to vote? And two, what can we expect from the Alliance for Change and perhaps the other political parties in their campaign in the indigenous communities?
Thank you for that question, Adam. What can we expect? Well, of course, we are aware that the AFC has continuously called for policy on migration. We've continuously called for transparency in the process undertaken to register or to naturalize the persons. There has been no information that has been forthcoming in relation to that. What we would need to do is to work with our constituents and representatives throughout those areas to understand exactly how many persons have been registered. We would be calling on GCOM as well to also issue information in relation to how many Waraos, for example, have been registered in the regions. In terms of voter education, though, it's really a challenge where we'll have to employ the use of more like the Spanish language to raise awareness on how or why they should vote for or the party that is going to do it right in relation to human rights. Because the Warao language is largely spoken by perhaps one community, which would be Whitewater, but there are a few other persons, not communities, that speak the language. So that is a challenge. But we're prepared to make sure that we have persons who speak both Warao, speak Spanish and English to get to those persons as well. And we will continue to call for transparency in relation to how many persons are actually being registered. Well, today's the last day. No?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll ask David to address part of that.
Adam, we have been saying, and the country has been saying all along, that the issue of Venezuelan migrants, rather whether they're here by descent or whether they're here by invitation or whether they're here to seek a better life, is an issue of major concern. 2 weeks ago, the minister responsible for immigration said to the country and to the parliament that there are 23,000 Venezuelans, migrants in the country. None in region and 10, for example. However, none in region 6, none in regions where we know they already exist, because of course the ministers went up in particular to region 10 to visit them to check on their conditions and those things like that, have their report of them living there. This government has, and I could say this without any fear of success or contradiction, has been registering these persons under the guise that they have some sort of family linkages, but have refused to. Them and GCOM have refused to tell the persons, tell the country how and where they've been registered. You can recall that in 2015, Region 8 was won by just, I think, 1 vote. What we're hearing is that the amount of persons from Venezuela that has been introduced and registered into Region 8 is in excess of 3,000 individuals. So it is an issue. They are short-sighted. They are short-sighted. In the end, when you bring persons because of, particularly Adam, because of the ruling which they hold steadfast made by the Chief Justice, once you're on the list, you can never ever come off the list. So you are willingly, for very short-sightedly, in the hope that all of these Venezuelan migrants would vote for them. If they have an opportunity, will vote for them to keep them in office. They are oblivious to the long-term consequences. And just as an aside, the Foreign Secretary, in a post which he never took down, in direct contradiction to the minister responsible for immigration, said out there are over 100,000 Venezuelan migrants in Guyana. While we understand and we welcome persons, and we understand persons that are here because of the circumstances in the country, it is very, very distressing and sad that the government has not taken any proactive measure to have a record of who's in this country or not. The government has promised every year, including last year, the Minister of Finance, we can't forget him, in Parliament has promised that the census would have been released before the end of 2024. We're heading into elections in 3 months, and no one knows the census. No one knows, Adam, if you were paying attention to Parliament last week, the the Prime Minister came for another $3 billion to pay, he said, ostentatiously for cash grants. That they've discovered another 30,000 persons who haven't been registered. When questioned, he said, they anticipate these persons will appear before, and because basically, so we asked, where do you anticipate these people coming? He says, my government, our CFAR, we do anticipate that another 30,000 persons will come out to the woodwork to collect these cash grants. And that, it may sound trivial and jokey, but you go back and listen to him. He doesn't know where, he doesn't know when, but he knows that he wants the money just in case these persons come out. And everyone knows it's just purely for electioneering. They'll take the money and record it in the book. Our most astute Auditor General will just give a tick to say, yes, it was spent on cash grants. He wouldn't audit who received it. And these 30,000 persons, obviously, that they anticipate will come forward, will be paid. So that we're now at persons over the age of 18, over the age of 18, we're now at 630,000 persons that they claimed have collected 100,000. Impossible.
Thank you, Mr. David Patterson. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, at this point I don't see any other hand raised. Let me just confirm, any other questions? Well, let me take this opportunity to thank you, members of the media, for being with us for more than an hour for this press conference. These are exciting times, and personally I am very happy, very pleased to be part of the Alliance for Change that will be contesting the 2025 general and regional elections.
Thank you.